that, it was kind of a bit of a, I guess, bit of a roller coaster journey in terms of trying to find out what kind of design work I wanted to do. So when I grew up, I didn't really see this path for me, to be honest. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. I grew up in a very like traditional Asian family. So I guess academic routes were very much the plan ahead for me, because that's kind of what my parents' expectations were. So now looking back, and I look at where I am now, I never even thought I'd be a designer, to be honest with you. But I guess it all starts from an early age of kind of going to school, trying to be a doctor. Actually, that was where my parents really wanted me to be. You know, I was very good at academic subjects, but I stumbled across design in one of my like random GCSE choices. So the reason this is kind of like an important part of my story is because um, it's kind of tapping into a lot of things I'm hearing from young people, where everyone kind of discovers design. It's not something that you choose for yourself. So when I was in GCSEs, kind of I did an IT design GCSE where there was like a small fraction, like a small unit in there where there was a bit of design in there, and I really enjoyed it. It's something I never really experienced before, so I kind of like kept pulling away at it, and then I mean, I really originally wanted to kind of rebel from the academic path, right? But design wasn't my initial like path of doing that. I actually wanted to pursue sport. So sport was my background. I did GCSE PE. I really wanted to get into like, you know, sports science, physiotherapy, or like something to do with sport, whether that was actually carrying out the sport itself or being in the sporting world. That was like my way of breaking out of the kind of like expectations set for me. And that didn't actually go to plan. Like many things in life, you can plan so far ahead and it just doesn't work out, because by my incredible luck, I ended up having the most horrific injury, like the second from last day of school, second from last day of my year 11 GCSEs, that big summer before you go into college where everyone's going to be like living their best life. I had such a big plan ahead for myself of picking my A levels, pursuing sport. I was going to kind of enter sporting competitions. That was like the defined path for me. And then the second from last day of school, GCSE PE, sunny day. It was during Ramadan, so I'm fasting at the moment. So this is probably quite a nice connection. So it was during Ramadan in school. I was fasting. I didn't have anything to drink or eat, but I was like, you know what? I got this, man. I'm gonna go out in PE. I'm gonna play for the football. It doesn't matter. I've got the energy for this. I've been doing it for long enough. I'm used to it. I went out. Then I started playing football. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then I started getting this like random stitch pain in my like my lower left side. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm just, you know, I haven't had water. I'm just getting a casual stitch. 10 minutes later, I remember literally such a blur, but all I remember is me getting the ball, kind of twisting to like pass or shoot, I think. And then I remember blacking out. And I remember waking up in an ambulance on the way to Romford Hospital, Queen's Hospital. And I had no idea what was going on. My body felt all numb. And I was like, what is going on right now? And I actually pulled loads of tendons in my left hip, which completely like just took me out. And I woke up in a hospital bed after I passed out again in the ambulance. And that entire summer where I was, you know, I had my eye on the prize of being active, going out and kind of doing athletic competitions, pursuing A levels in sport, and actually really like kind of, I guess, putting a lot of pressure on my physicality. That was completely taken away from me for I think what was 4 months. Wow. I had to learn how to rebalance on my left side, standing up, even just moving. So like even just like swiveling on this chair would have caused a lot of injuries. So I had 4 months of literally being bedbound, homebound, couldn't get out. I couldn't enjoy that entire summer of being out with my friends, doing anything. And I went through this really, really dark point. And the more I've spoken about it, the more I've started to realize actually how much of a like blessing that experience was for me. So that summer I needed something to keep me busy, right? Because my mind was always thinking about the things I've missed, the things that I was looking forward to, the things I can't do anymore. And then I actually had a cousin who was super talented. He lived in Tottenham, so he was very much kind of North London boy, immersed in grime music, always kind of was immersed into that world. And every time I used to go to my cousin's house growing up, he used to write music. So Fruit Loops is a beat maker, right? So it's what a lot of sound designers use to like make really cool beats for music. And then I used to just watch him. I used to just sit there by he had a small room, small table, most, the smallest screen, and like a few bits of equipment that he saved up for and got. And he'd make these beats and stuff. And we would literally just be in his room vibing. We enjoyed it so much that was kind of like my first immersion into something creative, because I think this is important to explain as well, because everyone kind of get exposed to some sort of creativity in different ways, right? So my one was music with my cousin. So it wasn't even design first, it was music. But like tapping into that culture, seeing how much he enjoyed it, the passion and the laugh and the way we would just make random stuff, that whole kind of like random phase of creation was just so enjoyable for us that summer when I needed something to keep me busy, my cousin came over quite a lot, and he'd bring like his equipment, and he'd like kind of make music in my house and keep me busy, keep me entertained. And at that point, we actually found a cracked version of Photoshop, where it was a Photoshop Elements, and we would make basically like mixtape covers. Like it was the most random stuff. Like you take photos of each other on your old old phones that didn't even have like HD cameras, and you take a picture, get it somehow onto the computer, and you'd cut out like your faces and stuff, and we'd make random designs, and we just loved them. They weren't for anyone else; it was just for us. And eventually, like that was during the MySpace music phase, where like that was blowing up. So that was like my first experience into like digital design, I guess. That was like how I started, where a lot of people on MySpace music were asking for people to make them their beats for their music, get their tracks up, but also design their pages. So that would be like creating like the little profile picture of them. And that's where we started going, oh, we could do that. We can edit a few pictures of you and put some cool effects on it. It wasn't well designed. You'd put like random lens flares on your ears, you look like an earring, like random stuff like that. But it was fun. Like we enjoyed it, people enjoyed it, they wanted to do it, and everyone wanted to do it. So we started making MySpace layout designs. We started learning how to like kind of like bring GIFs into like your animated page, like through the back end, like HTML codes. Like we thought we were so clever at the time. That was like the height of design for us, because we were actually creating things for fun. And it changed my entire mood that summer, because what was so daunting and scary for me to be like, what do I do next? Something came into my life at that point where I found a new sense of, I guess, I found a new hobby, a new passion, something that I was like, I really enjoyed doing this. And I wanted to kind of see if it would take me anywhere, because I think when you're at a really low point, right, you have to remember that when you find something that makes you feel good, you have to hold on to it. You have to hold on to that feeling, because there's a reason why you hold on to it, because it's giving you something that nothing else in life is giving you right now. And for me, I like to read into those signs in life and kind of pull away at those strings and pursue it. So I started, I had already applied for my A-levels by that point. I was going to do, I kept some safe options. I did business studies, IT as my backups, but then I had physical education, and I was trying to get into biology. So I felt like that would be, those would be the qualifications I would need to then pick a degree, that plan ahead that you always think about academically. And then that summer, obviously my parents had seen my mental state. They realized that actually this is really important for me to pick something that's going to make, take me out of this dark place. So I spoke to my parents in a very open conversation, very scary conversation, to be honest. I said, I don't think I want to do physical education and biology anymore. I don't want to pick those A-levels, because in a way I don't feel mentally prepared to want to take that on again. Because what if I pick PE and I'm not going to hit the certain level that I was used to before? What if I'm going to be scared, or it's going to be a gradual process for me to get that strength back in my hip and stuff, So I kind of ruled it out for me. So I made a big decision to just completely divert and go towards design, because I spent that entire summer not only just creating things for fun, but I relentlessly Googled what the design industry was. At the time there wasn't that much information available, but what you would get was like, what could you study at uni in design? What are those courses called? What are the things that those courses are teaching you? And then I would take those keywords and then search into like agencies or creative work out there that people are doing that links to these things. So I had to put that time in myself to really understand, if I make this choice, I need to become an expert in this choice. So I know that I'm confident to pursue this, because with PE, I was confident. I knew what the world was, that's why I had so much confidence in it. So I had to do the same for design, but not only to build confidence in myself, but to also build confidence with my parents, to say, I know that this might be scary for you guys, because this is not a path that anyone in our family has ever taken. It's not something that traditionally in Bengali communities is promoted as a job role, a job path, to be honest. So for a lot of people in my family, it's very much what is design? Are you sure? This sounds like a big risk. And, can you make money out of this? Will you be successful? Like all these big questions at an age of 16 and 17, you're like, well, whoa, like, it's quite a big weight on my shoulders to define this path and know whether this is going to be successful, but I need to give it a go, right? So I think at the age of 16, 17, I took that weight on my shoulders and said, I need to prove this. I believe in this and I enjoy it, and I'm going to become as good as I can with it because I'm going to work hard. And I kind of kept that going with me all the way through my journey to this day as well, to be honest. And a lot of people who have met me along the way probably said that at times I probably tried too hard to prove myself.
Yeah.
But that's probably because it's born from a young age where I've always had more pressure on my shoulders, not just at the job that we do, but in terms of the people and the expectations around me. And I pride myself on that because in a way that's pushed me, to be honest, always in the back of my mind to be like, I always do this for more than just myself. I had to do this to also support my family, my mum and dad. I knew that long term, my dad has an Indian restaurant. So he came to his country and kind of did his thing, man. He had his own vision, started his own restaurant, and he really worked hard to create something for himself where I'm trying to carve my path out. Yeah. But I knew long term in the future that, look, my parents didn't go to uni. They didn't have certain qualifications. They had to really work hard and sacrifice a lot for me to be where I am. So for me to pick a degree, which, we have to pay for at the end of the day, right? This path that I took, traditionally to go to uni and stuff there's money involved. There's actual, there's a livelihood involved in the future. So there's a lot of pressure on my parents and for me to like reward them for all the hard work and sacrifices they made for me. So me pursuing this path, I had to really research into everything. So I did my A-levels in design and I did graphic design and media studies. I was learning a lot about design and media as I was going. I wasn't an expert in that at all. I had no exposure to, in a way, the traditional design world. So when I started graphic design, I thought, my first like exposure to design was Myspace, digital design and Photoshop and just creating things for people, right? That was always what I did, create things that people would enjoy looking at and have fun with. Then you open up this can of worms in the design course where they're like, so who's your favorite typography artist? Oh, what exhibition do you go to? And I was like, what? I was like, hold on, I'm not an art gallery goer. Like, I'm not that type of person. Like, I didn't grow up like that. So when you get asked all these questions, you start thinking, have I made the right decision here? Because at the time, you don't know any better. If your first exposure to the design world is your A-level design tutor who is very traditional in his outlook of design, that's what you're going to register. That's what you're going to pick up. And then you start seeing other students around you who did art GCSE, fine art, very sculptural art or, very abstract conceptual art and design. I didn't do any of that. I was a kid at the time who just found crap versions of Photoshop. Like, I'm not a good illustrator. I can't draw. But my exposure to design was like through anime, Lego, or, very like kind of playful things that I would process as content or create with my hands. Like, I wasn't really that savvy with, typography artists, painters. I wasn't savvy about like photography and all these things that I guess some people do kind of like wear kind of carry around as pride when you like label yourself as a designer. They kind of go, they reference people a lot, and you're like, and I know this resonates a lot with young people that I speak to as well, that half the time people say a name and they're like, I don't have a clue who that is. Like, you don't have a clue who that person is. And going through my A-level experience, I had to kind of keep reminding myself that if I don't understand something now, I didn't understand something before when I was picking this course, I'm going to have to put in the work to catch up and understand this world of design. So I did start going to galleries. I did start going to exhibitions. I did start Googling, people I probably wouldn't have Googled before. And I started to understand this world of designer stuff. And realistically, as much as I would force the issue, I just wasn't interested by it.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. Like, now looking back, it's okay to not like everything in design. You're not expected to you don't have to be a typography fanboy to be a good designer. I think it's something I learned early. And I was like, what parts of design in the modern world do I actually really enjoy? And I see myself creating in the future. So I loved ads. I loved digital apps. I loved, at the time, these were the new things, app design, kind of like social media was just popping off. I mean, at the time, it was just Facebook. There was no Instagram at that point. When I was at college, then Twitter started coming out, and it was kind of like this new world of like people designing things and posting images. And I was like, this reminds me of my MySpace days. Like, we were just creating things to just upload, and it's like people, if that's for brands, great. Like, let me look into it. So obviously I kind of maybe caught on to something a bit early, which was like digital design for brands. And I was kind of like hooked on that. So I kind of tailored all my graphic design projects at A-level towards that. So I started doing a lot of like kind of like photo manipulation, image creation, kind of like digital design, layout stuff, and a bit of a rogue portfolio. And then I started thinking ahead in terms of going to uni, right? That was the big choice now. So along with my design and media A levels, I was, I had my backup, which was my IT and my business studies. IT realistically would have been the choice, because if design didn't pay off and I didn't get the grades, IT I knew would be, in my parents' eyes, a very reliable path. A lot of people in my family growing up were like IT engineers, and it was a stable job. And they went, "Oh, we can just like get you to work with them." And I could have just taken the easy route and just joined a very comfortable path, which was secure. And I didn't want that for myself. I never wanted that for myself. So I put in a lot of time and energy into my graphic design and media studies courses. And I actually got the better grades out of those two courses, which shows where my energy lied. And I kind of put the other courses on a back burner, to be honest. I made a choice for that. And I was just obsessed, because I'd go to college. And in college, it was like my first exposure to a lot of Asian people. Before that, my upbringing at school was, I'm born and raised in Essex and Romford. So I was like the only brown kid really at my school. So I've always kind of been immersed into, white communities and really kind of like adapting a lot. So obviously I'm Muslim, I'm from a Bengali background and stuff. So there's a lot of things that, I'm taught culturally, but also my religion also means I can't drink and all these type of things. So going to like an all white school, I had to learn how to get people to respect my values, but also fit in and be involved and be invited to like the Sweet 16 parties and still be around and not be uncomfortable around alcohol, and learn to be a bit more open-minded and learn how to integrate with different communities and learn that early. So I kind of had that intrinsically within my upbringing. So going to college, it was all that flipped over, because it was my first time actually being exposed to a more diverse kind of environment. So I went to college with like my white friends, and then I met like this big demographic of Asian people, and I was like, oh my god, this is alien to me. Why do I feel like an outsider, like amongst people who look like me, right? And I was like, this is weird. And then I tried to like, naturally try and befriend some Asian people, just to kind of be like, like we got that going on, right? Like, I kind of fit in here a little bit for once. And I thought I did. But what I realized slowly was they were from a very Asian heavy demographic. So where they were from, a lot of the students came from East London. So it was a very big Asian community. Yeah. So they weren't really exposed to diverse environments with a lot of white communities. So there was this tension between like my white friends and then Asian friends I met at college, who they just didn't seem to be able to vibe on the same wavelength and like the same frequency, like because they weren't even they probably didn't speak the same, they didn't speak the same or share the same kind of interests, or they didn't have mutual ground to connect with things, which I always found a bit weird, because I'm like, you should just be open-minded to just have open conversations and see what you like and you connect with on a level with people. But obviously, because I was immersed in between, I was able to kind of like gauge how to adapt to both environments. But the reason I wanted to kind of bring that up is because when I was doing design, I was, again, one of the only few Asian design students on the course. The majority of the Asian students were pursuing your STEM subjects, your English, maths, and sciences, and they had that path. So when I was like, going through college with this big portfolio box and a MacBook laptop trying to do design work, they were like, what course do you do, man? Like, what is that? Like, it was such an alien world to them. So when I would describe what I would do, they all kind of like treated me a bit special, but not in a good way. It was kind of like a.
Did you then feel isolated because you sat in the middle?
Yeah, I didn't really know. So basically, when I was going through school, I always felt like I had to accommodate for other people just to fit in. There's a lot more that we can dig deeper into growing up in terms of racism and all that type. That's a different story. I didn't want to get into that too early, but the upbringing at school and that experience wasn't easy, but I had to learn to adapt because I had no other choice. So obviously, when I went to college, I felt like it was my first time to maybe try and fit in where I might be accepted, right? Because that's kind of what I was craving growing up. And what I started to realize was, it's the same. I read it in a lot of books actually from a lot of people who speak on this topic, where you're too brown for the white kids, you're too white for the brown kids. And I used to hate it when Asian people at college, you would say, "Oh, you sound white," and I used to be like, "What do you mean?" what do you mean I sound what do you mean I sound white? And I used to find that just so like shocking. And then it's because a lot of obviously when you live in parts of London, right, you have a certain twang and accent, and the way you speak is defined by, you know, where you brought up and stuff. Like if you're from Liverpool, you have a Liverpool accent. If you're from Manchester, you have a Manchester accent. It's an accent, like what you pick up from where you are, right? But because I speak the way I speak, which is a bit more of an Essex tone,
Yeah.
but then they you know, the communities at college, they linked the way I spoke to white communities. They didn't link it to their own.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like an outsider amongst my, in a way, people who resembled me, you know, people who are from my ethnic background, who I felt like I was about to really connect with. They made me feel like an outsider.
Mhm.
So I was just kind of stuck in the middle. And to be honest with you, I just kind of did my own thing in that, while I was left to it in the middle, because I was just like, you know what, I need to really figure out what I want, because if I've been so excited to like kind of become immersed into the Asian community, but they're not really accepting me. But then when I'm trying to fit in with, you know, my white friends, there's also an element of, there's certain things I can't really connect with, because a lot of them would want to go out drinking or want to go out and do certain things that I probably wasn't comfortable with. So I had to learn these things quite early, and also question my identity quite early. So I just kind of put my head down and just said, you know what, I've got bigger things to think about right now, which is proving to my family that I want to pursue design. So I relentlessly every night would research into like universities, jobs, kind of big agencies out there that are winning awards. Because realistically, if I go to my parents, I need to say, if I pick this path, look at all the coolest stuff at the top level that I could achieve. Like I never set that as a boundary for myself to be like, why can't I go and reach that level? You know, I need to aspire for something that's credible. So I like showed my parents like Nike ads, kind of like really cool thing, like brands that they would understand. So like later on in my career, I was lucky enough to work with Cadbury, and I get to work with them again now with Bulletproof. So it's a big brand that my parents understood, you know, something that they can brag about with family abroad as well. Because everyone in the world, if it's a global brand, everyone might know about it. So if you speak to family Bangladesh, you go, what does your son do? Designer, what? But then you go, oh, he works on Cadbury. They're like, ah, great. He's so successful. Like whether, even if I did like the most smallest thing on that brand, that's big enough for them.
Yeah.
So I learned that quite early, that I needed to give my parents quite credible things to like showboat about. And then I ended up finding out about Ravensbourne. So Ravensbourne is a very digitally native university in London, which kind of brings in all design disciplines into one place. So it's like a design campus for all courses. It's not like another uni who has design embedded within other degrees and stuff like that. So it was tailored to just the design world. And I really wanted to throw myself into an environment which was, you know, just design, because I was trying to get away from the, you know, the academic side of the world. You know, I was trying to just become really immersed into this world of design. So I applied, and the first thing that they said to me was, oh, it's great, you got great A levels in graphic design and media, however you'll be the lowest on the pecking order in getting onto the course because you didn't do an art in GCSE. Yeah, so you know, you can imagine how I felt. I was like, and I felt like the world was crumbling before my, you know, below my feet, because I've come this far so far and really putting all this energy to this point to pick this option, and now they're saying that I can't do a degree. And how can I go home now and say to my parents, I've got told no? So I basically asked them, I said, what can I do to get on the degree? Like, what do I need to do? You know, is there anything else I need to do in my summer? You know, I'm happy to put in more work to like get an extra qualification. What is it I can do? And they said, there is one option, and that's doing a foundation. So a foundation diploma is basically a year between when you know, it's before, what do they call university? Further education.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before further education, you could do a foundation. And it's basically an extra qualification that people do if they don't have an art at GCSE, where you can kind of do a rotational design, a year of rotational design, where like you can learn fashion, lens-based media, graphic design, and 3D structure. So like, you know, like kind of architecture side, 3D structure or product design stuff. So it's like a 4-unit rotation course. It only costed me £150 to enter into the course. It wasn't a committed kind of degree course. You know, you can kind of give it a go for a year. There is no commitment and stuff. And it then gives you an extra bit of qualifications at the end. So I said, fine, I'll do it. My parents were like, is this basically like a gap year? Are you kind of behind, you know, because I'm not, you know, based on the age I was, you know, everyone was kind of going straight into a degree level and kind of following the defined path of what you should be doing at that age. And then for me, I was like, well, I'm going to take a year out in a way and do a foundation because I need to do it. it's the only way I can get onto a course. And at that point, my parents kind of lost a bit of confidence. They felt like the foundation was me kind of failing in a way, because in their mind, they're like, well, look at X person's son. He's going straight into his 4-year dentistry course, or he's like, you know, he's done so well in his A-levels and he's going straight into a degree. Why have you not gone straight into a degree? And I said, it's not that easy, because I didn't have the GCSE. So I took the foundation. That was probably a year where I didn't really have the biggest kind of confidence or support instilled in me, because a lot of people were a bit unsure about, oh, is this even going to work out now?
Yeah.
Again, I just carried that on my shoulders and said, this is going to just fuel me to keep going. And actually, my foundation year was one of the best years of my life. Not only because of me growing my creative education, but because of the people I met. And it was actually the first time I went into a education environment where, you know, at school it was all white, at college it was a mix, but I didn't feel like I fitted into any kind of clique or whatever. Going to Ravensbourne, it was basically an intersection of London and beyond. You know, universities where you can get people all over the country or even around the world, you know, foreign students as well, coming in to one melting pot, and people just have their own personalities, their own identity. And I met some of the greatest friends I ever met who were from just different parts of London, from different backgrounds, you know, from all ethnic backgrounds, all religions. And I never felt like an outsider. Everyone brought their individualism to the table, and everyone connected, and we made this really strong friendship group. And actually that friendship group that I made at foundation was the friendship group that then went through the entire uni experience with me, even into degree. And we all kind of shared similar outlooks or experiences in life. Like we all experienced some sort of setback or some sort of like anxiety around our cultural backgrounds, or, you know, there was something that kind of really gelled us together, and it was a bond that was made. And in a way that was something where if someone was kind of low on confidence, or someone wasn't, you know, needed a bit of motivation, one of us would come in and be like, remember, man, remember while we're doing this, and like pull each other back out. And we needed that. Yeah. You need those people around you to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, and they're there to help you support you and get you there. So we all did that at uni. And then, you know, I'll do a whistle stop tour of just like my uni experience. So from foundation, what I went into it with a very graphic design mindset, thinking graphic design is the path. Graphic design is actually like the traditional go-to design outlet, really. Like everyone wants to do graphic design. But what I started to realize was my approach to graphic design was very different to the other students. I didn't do, you know, like I said, typography and traditional design work. I was always thinking about like a campaign idea, or like I was thinking about, oh, what if this moved? Or what if this was interactive? Or what if I like touched this and this happened? And I'd always start describing my design work in stages. So as if they were storyboards. And what they realized was actually maybe motion design might be a world that you're interested in.
Yeah.
So, you know, actually taking it at that next level of kind of telling stories, telling more engaging, you know, kind of moving visuals so that you can actually build a story over time. You know, maybe motion design, something up your street. So I looked into that, and I fell in love with it. Just like, because I was in Ravensbourne, you're immersed into all the design courses, right? All the lectures are going on around you, and because it was an open building, you could just sit in on a lecture, or just sit in on a class and just sit in the background and take it in for free. And I was like, I'm paying £150 to be at a university. I'm not even committed to this tuition fee. I can like take this all in now. I was like, yeah. Like I sat in the back. And like took it all in, and I started to see the work that was coming out on the course, and I was like, oh my god, this is cool, man. And like this is new. This is something different.
Yeah.
And I felt like I want to be part of that. Something new, something different, something that felt a bit strange for people. That was like, oh my god, what is this space? No one really knows what this is. And I was like, that feels like it was a part of design that resembled me. Like I was like, I want to be at the forefront of this. I want to give this a go. So I then chose motion design as my BA at uni, and I try explaining that to my parents. Oh yeah. So you were going to do graphic design. So what the hell is motion design now? What is that? Like
Cadbury's advert.
Yeah, they're like, what the hell is that? And I was like, yeah, like advert. Yeah, exactly. Advert, like things that you see online, you know, that's us. And Instagram had just started. So now, and I would basically have to kind of like fake it till I made it with them and be like, oh, you know, these apps that you have in your phone and all these things. Yeah, I could make that. Like, that's me. Like, that's digital design and like UX design, not motion. But I had to get them in a world, you know, in a mindset to be like, that's what it is, so they could understand it, or at least explain it to someone else, you know. And you know, I did my degree. It was Ravensbourne was the most incredible time for me because I just grew in confidence over the time. you know, from the people I met, the different disciplines, and just being immersed in design and taking bits and pieces from everyone and being like, oh, that's really interesting. Whether I would do it or not, I wanted to be interested or engaged like in those worlds and understand it. So my wider creative knowledge was growing at university. But obviously I was building my technical confidence. Technical confidence is something that obviously you learn over time. You never become perfect at what you do. You learn that the more you do it. So I was learning how to do motion design on top of also becoming a better graphic designer at uni. And then obviously you're looking around your shoulder and you've got people that already knew about motion design doing incredible 3D motion work, and you're like, oh my god, that's scary. But I was like,
it's funny you mentioned that, because the idea of being exposed to like the latest trends or tech, or you know, things that are just happening right now. And earlier on you mentioned people dropping in names of people that they knew when they were younger, and how irrelevant that really is, and how probably harmful that might be. You're sort of always referencing people from the 80s or 90s, when really younger people just want to see something fresh, don't they? So what's going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like how I approach things. It's how a lot of like, you know, students I speak to now are approaching things. They don't really want to, you know, it's good to look back and take learnings from experience, but people want to do something new. You know, people want to evolve and create things that are going to challenge the world and, you know, and excite us. And I think sometimes if you keep living in the past and keep glorifying old successes, it does stagnate creativity for young people, because they then start to idolize and compare their work to things that have been done in the past, rather than redefine and write their own rules and create new ideas and actually make someone who is like 15, 20 years into their career go, oh my god, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, like if you go to an interview and maybe fearing that you might be grilled on the best design, the typography dollars or Bauhaus or whatever, but if they spin it around and said, who are you into now? Who's creating the hottest, newest stuff? That's something for them to feed off, because it's relevant to where they're at. You know, it's funny how you could just spin that around and make it much more passionate and energetic than being like more of a, you know, trying to sort of grill somebody to make them sort of say something that they don't know about, or, you know, to make them feel awkward maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I do find that sometimes, because obviously when you're passionate about something, right, you want to share that passion with someone else to show them how passionate you are. That's how it works, right? Because it gives you confidence to be like, I know what I'm talking about because I know all about all this stuff. But if you're engaging with someone new and you keep trying to make them adapt to what you like, then you don't really get the most out of that person. Because like you said, if you trigger them in a way that excites them, you see their passion. So like if someone at college had spoken to me about Myspace design, I would have been like, oh my God, did you know like Tiny Temper, Chipmunk, all these grime artists have like incredible banners designed now? Like, did you know you could do this? But no one asked me those questions. So I couldn't show my excitement about it. It was hidden. But instead they'd be like, you need to really scrub up on your typography language and pick better fonts and all this. And I was like, realistically at that point, I was like, who cares, man? I was like, that's not the bigger picture here. But because you're always learning from people more experienced than you show a level of respect, right? Which you should do. I'm not saying you shouldn't respect people with experience in their careers, but they should also be open-minded to learn from you. And that kind of does lead in quite nicely into like when I started working at Design Bridge. And actually there's a few Design Bridge people here in the room actually who, you know, I'll give them a bit of a shout out after, because I actually owe a lot to them in my career to where I am now. But obviously throughout uni, that's where Design Bridge actually came in. So in my second year of university, I had just a stroke of luck, to be honest with you. Luck kind of found through hard work, but luck nonetheless, in terms of my lecturer knew that I was really interested in branding. You know, once I started like looking into the world of design, branding was always the recurring theme. I loved looking at how like brands were evolving for like a digital age and like really kind of like becoming more progressive and doing cool stuff. So like I even did my final major project on Arsenal and how they become more digitally like elevated through like digital experiences. And I did a whole project on it and I used motion to really bring that to life. So obviously when I was in my second year of university, I was still scrubbing up on my technical skills. I didn't really have a full portfolio ready. Like I didn't even have a finished project, to be honest with you. They were all bitty work in progress projects, but an opportunity comes up at second year where Design Bridge approaches a lot of universities in the UK for a bursary scheme. And the bursary scheme is incredible because it basically means you get put forward for this short list of interviews where you can then be in a chance with doing a 4-week internship over a summer between your second and your third year of university. Where you intern at Design Bridge, you get kind of stuck in with all the design teams, get exposed to loads of different projects. But if they really like you and you've done really well, at the end of it, they offer you a full-time job after you graduate. So even before you graduate, they guarantee you a full-time job after you leave. but they also pay for your last year of university.
Wow.
Yeah. And at that time, internships itself and placements were like gold dust. Like that was the big thing everyone wanted, right? You know, you want to build that experience in your portfolio to really learn where you're going and kind of have that in your CV. But the concept of someone paying for your last year of university, it felt like you won the lottery.
Yeah.
Like I remember when my senior lecturer said that's what you potentially could get out of this. I ran home that day and I said to my mum and dad, I was like, I've just applied for this internship opportunity. My tutors put me forward for it. If I get it, they'll pay for my last year of university. And my mum and dad, in their mind, were like, "Oh my god, is that like a scholarship? Is that like a because in the medicine world, a scholarship's like this thing that you get, like we'll pay for your university and all this." And they're like, they're thinking about the bigger, like, "Oh my god, we can tell people my son got a scholarship." And I was like, "No, that's not the point. The point is that there is a big agency out there that works on the likes of Cadbury and all these incredible brands in the world. At the time, they had KFC as well. And I was like, they work on all these incredible brands. They are willing to invest in someone like me who's creative. Does that not show you something, that how much value there is in this?" And that was like the first moment my parents took a step back and they were like, "Wow, this is a big industry. Like they are willing to spend what, $9.5 grand on you?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, me." So obviously, this is before I even got it, right? So I kind of like put the seed in early and said to my parents, was like, "Look, I really want this. I'm excited about this." They saw the excitement. So the whole idea of even being accepted to be brought into an interview was like it was a bit far for me. I was like, I don't know if I'll even get it, but I can at least get excited about it. It gives me something to be excited about. Luckily, they considered me for the interviews, and Ed, who's actually in this chat, I can see him actually, is someone who I worked with quite a lot in the early stages of my career at Design Bridge and on my internship. So I got through the interviews, showed them some of my work in progress projects. But out of all the projects, it wasn't even my motion design projects that they really liked. It was this one little project that I did, which I hid away. And it was basically a documentary unit that we do in the first year of university, which is just to teach us how to use cameras. It's a part of like filming that we would learn as part of the course. Yeah. And the brief was basically to pick a title from the brief. And one of the stories was where have I come from? Where do I come from? And I wanted to tap into my culture. So I did this really kind of really badly filmed documentary edit of like my cultural background, my mum and dad's story of when they came to this country and how that's actually given me opportunities here. And I wanted to capture that in a film because it's an opportunity to finally do that. That was the project that they picked out in my interview, because I think at that point I realized that they had already seen my work to get me to that interview stage. But what they really wanted to learn more about was the person behind behind the work. And I think that project really truly reflected my story. And it was the first time that I realized that actually I shouldn't hide away from my culture, my identity. I shouldn't put that on the side and tailor myself to everyone else all the time. And it was the first time that I felt accepted for who I was. And it was actually when you speak about these big buzzwords of diversity and inclusion now, and how I speak to a lot of young graduates now who are Asian, and they say, is my ethnicity going to limit me? Because obviously all you hear now is lack of diversity. There's a low number of minority ethnics in this industry. It's always kind of negative. It's always very much like, here is the problem. Here is, and it's so daunting for young people who see this industry, who want to consider it and go, there's all these problems in the industry for people like me. Like, this doesn't feel very welcoming for me. So when I didn't really realize this when I had my interview and when I went through that project, is that it was the first time I realized that you just got to be considered. You just got to be in the room. And the whole point is, once you're in the room, you have a chance like everyone else. You have a chance to show who you are like everyone else. But what I've realized over time in my career is that there's not enough diverse talent coming through the door for the interview stages, because it's a pipeline thing. There isn't enough diversity coming through the pipeline of, whether that's going to university or not, but even trying to consider this path in the first place, to then be considered, for applications, and then being in an interview room to be chosen from. Everyone has the same chance of being chosen based on how hard you work and the creative work you do, right? But it's getting there in the first place, which is something we've learned a lot by doing mentoring with a lot of organizations and communities, a lot of kind of work with schools, understanding actually that we need to encourage more young people to pursue this path, and with confidence to actually understand where you can go with it. I did a lot of that work on my own.
Yeah, Fahud, do you think that's more down to your personal drive, because and the sort of underdog sort of type spirit that the touch points that you've mentioned through that. I personally, when I hear you, I think if you hadn't faced those hurdles, you might have sort of just took it for granted and maybe not pushed yourself as hard. You know, it's not like trying to impress mum and dad. It was trying to overcome hurdles of not being able to get to certain parts, so you couldn't get to university because you hadn't done the GCSE. If you would have come from a different background, you know, would you have just done GCSE and maybe just floated through it and just took it for granted? Having those hurdles was what motivated you, but not everybody from your background has that motivation, and they maybe do just fall into the stereotypical what mum and dad wants because it's maybe easier or it's just what's expected. And more going, I think more pertinently is the idea of why is it that, let's say, from the background perspective and your parents, is that just fear of what not being a doctor or a nurse or whatever? Is it just not understanding what creative or many other industries, like what they entail? Because it seems like there is obviously a huge amount of opportunities, but it's maybe just a fear of not understanding it yet, or it's just not part of their mainstream culture.
It's what it's not what they were taught growing up, and you have to for a long time I didn't really understand it till I got older, and I started to realize that you need to empathize for the journey that they've been on, what they've been exposed to, you know. And even in our lives, like, we know about things because we're immersed in it, or someone's taught us about it, or we've seen it firsthand. When they were growing up in Bangladesh, especially, you know, at the time, the biggest dream that they would have was to get out of Bangladesh, go to a Western country, to get a stable job, successful careers. And the ones that you see on TV at the time or in the media were lawyers, doctors, people who had businesses, you know, all these and accountants, you know, very stable, well-paid jobs where you could then build a livelihood and then build, you know, a comfortable life for your family. You know, from where they came from, they find comfort in the most beautiful small things in life, right? Because they didn't have anything so extravagant growing up. So the idea of coming to England and, you know, starting a business or having the opportunity to like work hard to then raise a family in this country, who would then be given the opportunity to go to school and like have the opportunity to choose to go to school, choose an A-level, get GCSEs, get an A-level, go to a degree, and then potentially become one of those lawyers and accountants and doctors and take that educational path that they didn't have the luxury of having. You know, when they were growing up, they didn't have GCSEs in Bangladesh, they didn't have A-levels. They were behind in that sense. So for them, the media would sell them an idea of success, of employment success, like, you know. So they envisioned that for their children when they grew up, you know. When I was growing up, they kept saying, like, you're going to do really well in life when you become a doctor, you can then become really successful, because that's what they thought was the idea of success. Yeah. But we're a generation that's born in this country, you know, we're a first generation born in this country, immersed in British culture, but also immersed to the wider world. And, you know, the luxuries of even like being able to go to, like I said, a museum and an exhibition. Mm. We didn't go to those when we were younger because it wasn't something my parents did in Bangladesh. So it wasn't on their priority list when they were in England, like, oh, let's take our kids to become a bit more, you know, in tune with art. Like, it wasn't a thing. Yeah. So they didn't grow up with that mindset. So I wasn't exposed to those things growing up. So me having the luxury of growing up in this country to have a choice when I was old enough to go and venture to London on my own and be like, oh, I could just go into an exhibition and see what this is about. My parents didn't have that. So I actually have a bigger responsibility over time to educate my family and extended family to be like, you know, show them this wider world that probably they never knew about. And I can't blame them for not understanding it. I actually have a responsibility to teach them about it. And it's the same responsibility that I guess a lot of us have when we speak to graduates who actually are going through the same thing, you know, encouraging them to take their parents through the journey. You know, you have to get them on side. It's not, you know, if it really matters to you, you need to show them what this world is. And I think that's important.
But it's really important, but it's also, from what it was a long time ago, but from when I remember being back at that age, I sort of just craved independence. So sort of necessarily communicating what I was doing or going through, that was sort of very much down the ladder. That wasn't what I wanted to do. You know, you wanted to be further away from them in some respects. So I suppose it's been really consciously, you know, going out your way to do that, isn't it? Is to guide them through it, of whatever background it is. It's, you know, it's important, I suppose, to be on that level where you're honest and you sort of, you give them the facts that so that they can base their pride or, you know, whatever it might be they feel based on the truth, not just maybe hearsay or seeing you passing, you know, through the house once every now and then. So I suppose it's a conscious thing that we should all do, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
But it's not always that easy. It's when you go through that phases of life, it's a bit of it's a strange time, isn't it, for everybody? You know, you're changing quite heavily, aren't you? But it's funny because you mentioned that, like with your dad coming over to this country and then setting up a restaurant, and how much that's a sort of story of adversity, isn't it? And how that sort of actually comes through in you. That's
100%.
it shows, that's how hard that must have been at that time, and how much of a gamble that is. You're just in a completely different country, just don't know who, the community and all these sorts of things. But yeah, that sort of timeline, you think through when you talk, that sort of shows that sort of that grit and determination. And that's also something I say to a lot of young people, is about how hard work everything is. It is just, you've got to work your socks off to try and get somewhere, and sort of soak it up when you do, and just sort of be proud of yourself, and then move on and move forward. Is there anything you think from your background and for the people from your community that you'd advise like today, if you're looking back?
Yeah, I would say looking back is taking pride in how far our parents have come is something that we need to really carry with us growing up, because like I said, it was the biggest driver for me in turn. Well, I internalized that motivation because I saw my dad in a way, like he was a pioneer of his own right, like coming into this country and being part of that like curry house hype at the time, where like, bringing our culture into the country and like really making Indian food a presence in British society and stuff. And, in a way, starting with nothing to make this business for himself. And, over time, he had so much success from it that I watched that growing up, right? That I took so much pride in watching my mum and dad's hard work. Like my mum as well is an absolute superwoman. She got married really early, actually, when she was younger. So she actually didn't really get to finish school and stuff. But my mum would work so hard, in a 1-bedroom flat with my dad, and they actually shared a 1-bedroom flat with my dad and his cousin and his wife. So there's 4 people living in a 1-bedroom flat. One would share the living room, one would share the bedroom. They didn't really have the income at the time to really kind of do their own thing. And my mum would basically work part-time on the side, doing textiles. It was kind of like really long hours overnight, just to make, basic minimum wage. But then everything she earned, she put into this pot of money to basically fuel my dad's dream of starting his own restaurant. And I always look back on that, and I think that sacrifice that my mum put in for my dad so that they could build something together, this kind of, they were united in this vision of being like, we're going to have to work really hard to create something really, powerful for our kids in the future, right?
Yeah.
And my mum is incredible because she balanced like parenthood, family, all my dad's kind of, she fueled all my dad's kind of dreams and visions. And when we got older, she wanted to obviously do something for herself, but she was always obviously looking after us and taking us to school and coming back, and kind of like always being around for the family. That when I was old enough and my brother was old enough, my mum decided to take on a PGC course. So she wanted to do childcare. Like she wanted to kind of study again. And my mum studied part-time at home. I used to grow up helping her with her work. Like I was like 13, 14, 15, and my mum would like obviously get me to like spell check things, and I was doing my schoolwork on the side. I basically didn't have my parents to help me with my homework. I had to just do it on my own. So I was doing my schoolwork, but then my mum would be sitting next to me doing like her like PGC coursework, and obviously I'd be like helping her rewrite things. And at the time we just got a computer, so I'd help her type things up. So I was doing my school life, but also helping my mum. And that sharing that journey with her, because I believed in I knew how much she had sacrificed for us, that I wanted to give something back. And I felt like at a young age I finally had something I could do, so I watched my mum like really work hard to do something for herself after committing so much time to my dad. And then eventually she became a qualified teacher, and she kind of like built her qualifications up over time, and she worked at private nurseries and stuff, and she was so proud of that, because she was able to be, she finally did something for herself, because after so many years, she did so much for everyone else all the time. My mum always put others first. And I think growing up, I've taken everything I've learned from my parents in terms of, being there for other people, never kind of putting your ego first, but also being proud to have a vision and having like really big ambitions. My dad taught me that. My mum taught me how to be humble, but both of them taught me that you have to be kind to people along the way. it's just everything I've learned now, the type of person I want to be in life, the type of person I want to be in my career and profession, even as a friend, I learned that all from my parents. And I think to anyone who's coming from my background when they're younger, who are younger now, is you might not think your parents understand you right now, but maybe we should do a better job of understanding them and take, they've been through a lot. Our parents have done a lot to get us here. It's no easy feat of settling into this country, leaving everything behind that imagine you growing up somewhere and then being told to leave that behind at such a young age, to start somewhere new with a new language, especially, the racial prejudice that was around in the country at the time when they came. They had to tackle that as well, keep us safe. My parents kept me very protected growing up, but in fear of that. So really understand the journey that they've been on, because I think that will actually help you communicate better with them. So that's the biggest advice I'd give to people.
Yeah, that's also for your mum. That's a case of the prime example of never too late to learn. It's
exactly never too late.
The time always comes around, doesn't it? And there'll be the opportunity. I think that's, again, for a creative perspective, but again, worldly perspective, I suppose, is that we tend to get to a certain limit and maybe sort of stop ourselves from diving into something new or experiencing a new discipline, or trying to sort of to push ourselves further. But the opportunities, especially in today's world, it's just at the end of your fingers, isn't it? So it's dive into anything whenever you can, and keep on pushing yourself. I'm conscious of the time, Fahud, like with all of these things, they fly by so fast, and there's so much more I'd love to talk about, and especially from the cultural sort of side, and the topics around diversity at the moment, and how we go about that collectively. But I think we'll probably be best leaving that for another hour, I think. Another time. But it's been brilliant to find out more about yourself, your background, and your story today. And I'm sure it's only going to go upwards from here.
I appreciate that.
It's been really appreciated. Is there anywhere people can find you personally, and Bulletproof or Design Bridge? Any mentions that you want to give before we finish?
I mean, if you want to find out a bit more about me, the easiest place to find me will be Instagram. I've got a pretty easy name to find. You just got to type it in, I'll probably pop up. But yeah, I'm pretty chill on social media, to be honest. I like to share the things that I do in my career, but also my perspective on things, and I do a lot of mentoring as well. So if you want to learn more about that, and even other organizations that we can connect you with to either help you become a mentor, become a mentee, connect you with schools so that you can kind of like nurture younger talent, hit me up. I'm always happy to like connect people together, and as well as you can see some creative work that I do over the course of my career, which I guess is stuff that you can find anywhere else, to be honest.
Perfect. That's brilliant, mate. It really is a great start to the weekend. Hope everybody has a good long bank holiday, and we'll catch up with everybody soon. Take care.
Nice one. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Fahud, I will be hanging around just for a couple of minutes if you need.
Yeah, I'll be about, mate. I'm here.
If anybody else